Thank you. I'll just check I've got the clicker working as well. It's been a little bit of a trap for a few people. Just up on the first slide that we have up on the screen, if you have a look at these three artworks that are part of a Waste to Art exhibition at Outback Arts in Coonamble, you can see three very different approaches to using waste as a material to make artworks. From a dress that's made out of chip packets all the way through to a pink unicorn made out of all these amazing packaging items. Waste to Art is challenging people across our NetWaste region to really think about waste in a very intimate way and in a way in which they actually work directly with waste materials. Just to give you a bit of background on NetWaste, NetWaste is a voluntary regional waste group. So for those people who aren't in New South Wales and aren't familiar with the model, we are funded by the New South Wales EPA. We have a small staff who assist the 25 member councils who make up NetWaste. And the range that we occupy is more than a third of New South Wales geographically. Our population is only about 500,000. But when we had a consultant come over from Ireland to have a look at what was happening in NetWaste, they were pretty staggered that our territory ranges all the way from Lithgow to Broken Hill. So some of the trips, if you drove from one side to the other, it's almost like driving across Europe to drive across NetWaste. So when we talk about trying to engage people in education programs, we have some very large, relatively well-resourced councils, all the way through to some very small councils who have very limited resources, where a waste officer may be in charge of food, health and safety, in charge of planning approvals, and during their day they might receive a phone call about 4 or 5 different things that relate to the general business of a council, not just waste. So we were looking for education programs that would allow them to work with the community but potentially connect with other people who could help them out in smaller spaces and smaller contexts. I just wanted to acknowledge the team at NetWaste. It's a small but mighty team, and I think it's pretty important that I just recognise the fact that I couldn't run a program like Waste to Art or engage in the education activities that NetWaste can undertake without the support of this team. And particularly Anthony Cullen-Ward, our coordinator, works incredibly hard to achieve a lot of joint procurement and other contractual arrangements for our councils so that NetWaste can try and achieve some economies of scale and collaboration. We're very lucky to have been joined by Emily Miller as our project officer, who is working on our CRC program at the moment, and I couldn't run Waste to Art without the help and support of Heather Pike, our admin, who does an incredible amount of work and herself came from a visual arts background. I just have to make sure that I acknowledge the fact that NetWaste is funded by the New South Wales EPA. That funding does allow a lot of outcomes for our councils, and it's much appreciated and valued, particularly by smaller councils who wouldn't have access to an education officer, an education program, or any sort of education planning or outreach without the funding that the EPA provides. And I also have to thank Sims Metal, our major sponsor. If I was to say to everybody in this room that there was a $1,000 prize, which there isn't because our budget is quite limited, but if I was to say to you there's a $1,000 prize at the end of this session for the best artwork made out of recycled materials that you can find in this room, can you imagine the kind of object that might come from that particular activity just amongst the people in this room? We'd be staggered by what somebody would come up with. So I really do appreciate the fact that Sims providing us with excellent prize money means that we attract a number of really first-time artists and also professional artists to Waste to Art. I also have to thank the member councils from NetWaste who take part. So of our 25 councils, 20 councils currently take part or have access to Waste to Art as an education competition, which is fantastic, with particular thanks going to Outback Arts, who support a number of our smaller councils. Those councils who don't have the capacity to take part in Waste to Art, and this will become clear in a moment as to why they don't have the capacity to do that, often just don't have the staffing or the ability to to have the time to run a waste to art exhibition, and we totally understand that. And I would love to personally be able to go and run a waste to art competition for those last 5 councils, but waste to art is only one small part of what we do at NetWaste. And so Waste to Art is a community art exhibition. When we say community, the artists section in our categories is separated so that community members are encouraged to take part in Waste to Art because they're not going up against professional artists. So there's quite, as I said before, good prize money in the Waste to Art space, but if you're a general member of the community, you mightn't want to go into an art competition where you're up against the local artist or other artists. So we have separate categories to ensure that community members can take part, access prize money and go on display without having to pit themselves against professional artists. Waste to Art has run for over 20 years, and it's run in lots of different ways and formats. But I guess the main thing that we wanted to do with Waste to Art, and with the changes and updates that I've made to the program over the last couple of years in my role, was to think about how we can use the images and the artworks that are created in Waste to Art to really increase the amount of conversations that we have around our attitudes towards waste, and to provide education opportunities so that Waste to Art isn't just an exhibition of works of art made from materials that were destined for landfill or that could be easily recycled, but rather that we would have particular themes that we would then build our education efforts around. So the last 3 years have seen 3 distinct themes for Waste to Art, and it's great to have some visuals up on the screen now for you to see some of the artworks that are produced as part of the Waste to Art program. The first theme, and my first year in the role at NetWaste as Environmental Learning Advisor, was the theme of textiles and fast fashion. And so with the councils that were taking part, and there were about 14 councils taking part at that time, we had lots of conversations around textiles waste. And as the participants made artworks, that you don't have to make it from the theme waste, but there is encouragement to do that. And there is a prize each year for the best artwork made from our theme waste. For the year of textiles and fast fashion, we had activities like a trashy fashion parade out at Broken Hill, run at the materials recycling facility. And all of these small community approaches to the various theme wastes take on a very local theme. Our theme in 2024 was the year of packaging. This was a great theme. It worked really well for us in terms of educating people around recycling. In the NetWaste region, we have 3 MRFs that hand sort recycling, and it's really important for us to get the message out to our communities that there are people who are handling the recycling as it goes through the process. And so for the year of packaging, if we were running workshops in particular council areas, we'd make it very clear to students in the community that the recycling was handled in a certain way, and that their approach to the sorts of packaging that they chose and the sorts of packaging that they recycled, that was quite important. This year sees us engaging with the Year of Toys, which has been a very whimsical and fantastic theme for us. Batteries has been a big theme at this conference, and for us to be able to talk to kids in particular about the fact that toys have embedded batteries in them has been a real eye-opener. And the majority of kids, when you hand them a toy that has a battery in it, they have no idea that there's a battery in that toy. And we discover that through the workshops that we run as part of Waste to Art. And so the way that Waste to Art works is each council holds its own local competition. So we can see as many as 20 local Waste to Art competitions. These can be held in halls, in libraries, at the local pool, or at the local recycling facility. And each of those local competitions chooses a range of winners and sends those on to our regional showcase and final. We support each of the local competitions with an information pack that gives them everything, including a run sheet, to work through and tick off all the steps to run Waste to Art, from the initial advertising and entry forms all the way through to packaging the works and sending them off to the regional showcase and final. And Heather Pike, our admin, does a fantastic job of administering that pack. And so, particularly for councils that appreciate that extra assistance and resourcing, that pack means that they don't really have to think about what they're going to do for the competition beyond a few key ingredients that they need that I'll come to in a moment. So our finalists go to the regional showcase and final each year. That hopefully will be held in Broken Hill next year. This year it's to be held in Dubbo, and we move it around the NetWaste region At the regional showcase and final, we'll see over 100 artworks and finalist works from all those different councils. And the works that we see are so varied and so different. And I've just put an example on the board of an artwork made from a Weet-Bix box and a cardboard box made by a student. There's a cornflakes box in there as well, made by a student at Nyngan. And when we talk to the kids at Nyngan about the hand sorting that goes on at the Gilgandra MRF, where their recycling is taken, the recycling in Gilgandra travels over 2 hours across to Gilgandra, 180 kilometre trip for that recycling. And for the kids to learn about that, one of the great things about Waste to Art is that if you just show them information, we were talking before about the handout mentality, if you just show them something, it isn't really the same as having a conversation where they're creating and making something and you're talking with them as they're building their creations. It really does make for deeper learning. And as was mentioned, given that I have a visual arts background, for me, I do think that art has a special power for allowing people, when they learn about a material, by turning it into an artwork. You learn about the material properties as you construct your works. The things that you need to run a Waste to Art competition include, your budget will vary greatly. The average budget is about $5,000 to run a local Waste to Art competition, but that varies quite greatly from council to council. And sometimes if Waste to Art is embedded at the local gallery, their budget might be a little bit healthier, which is great. But we do assist with some additional funding and with assistance with workshops and other programs. You do need to secure sponsors for prizes if you would like to really get people in, and the sponsors for prizes are often people who are working in our local communities in the sustainability and waste space, which is a terrific outcome for us. You need a staff member who can look after the initial media, who can be a point of contact for the activity. And we have found that it is advantageous to have a council staff member run a Waste to Art program over volunteers, because at times volunteer organisations can shift and change. And for the regional showcase and final that I held in Blaney, we had a volunteer organisation that collapsed just prior to that event, and that made it quite difficult. So we often try to find somebody employed by council, but they might not be employed in the waste space. And so that person hopefully will assist with a range of things, including helping to connect local artists for workshops. When I started Waste to Art, I looked at all the categories we had, and I thought we have far too many categories. That's crazy to have an art competition that has all these categories, all these potential works that could come in. But now I'd actually like more categories, because every time I go to a town where kids are doing workshops, I would like to reward more and more students who are taking part and community members. So I keep finding ways to integrate more and more artworks into the competition. All of these different categories mean that there is a chance for each of the students or community members who would like to take part to have a chance at getting their artwork up and on display. They write an artist statement that accompanies their artworks that explains why they chose the materials that they're using. And the artwork that we have in front of us at the moment is a moth that is made from Coles shopping bags that have degraded and are no longer able to be used as a shopping bag. So if you look at the circles and a few other aspects of this moth, and the artwork is called Metamorphosis, it's from Broken Hill, you can see that it's entirely made from discarded shopping bags. Now this moth has undergone that metamorphosis from being waste and material that would have been discarded, and unfortunately those bags currently aren't recoverable as a recyclable item. It now graces the wall of an early learning centre in Broken Hill, and the kids read stories in front of that moth. So it's just a lovely story and a way of talking with the community rather than talking at the community about how we can respond to some of the challenges that we have in the waste space. Some of the other things that you might see at a Waste to Art exhibition. You see this fantastic little bottle lid snake. What a great visual image for us to use when we're producing material to talk to the community about what can and can't be recycled. They provide great images for us, and the student who made that particular work, to win that competition and to win prize money at a regional showcase and final, it's quite a lovely moment artistically and for the community. When we talk about capturing the heart of the community, when you have an event called Waste to Art, where everybody in the community loves the event, you have a ready-made audience and group of people who really want to help you in the waste space with other projects. So whilst it's not going to divert a lot of waste from landfill or recover a lot of material, it's building a really strong audience for us. And the other artwork you can see there are flowers, and the hearts of those flowers are made out of coffee pods. And if you had to pick an example of a hard to recycle item that's got organics embedded in metal and plastic, the coffee pod's a great one to talk to kids about, a complicated item that can't go into the recycling. A couple of other things. The work that you can see here that's made out of Coke cans and other items, and the choices that have been made in terms of this artwork are just fantastic. The student who made this work made this during a particularly difficult time while they were with a family member in hospital, and during that time the family had all these different cans of Coke while they were waiting around and seeing what the outcome of this particular moment at Dubbo Base Hospital would be. And it's really a heartwarming story that goes with some of these artworks. So it goes beyond just recycling items and thinking about how we can make these vibrant and amazing artworks. A lot of the stories really resonate in the local community and tell these terrific stories. Down in Wedenshire, they just brought recycling in as a new system. It hadn't been there for very long. And so when we went down to talk to the school about what should and shouldn't go in the recycling bin, we made some artworks to go with Waste to Art there as well. And it's just a really great opportunity to show the kids how recycling works, but then run a workshop as well, so they associate it with fun activities. We work with a particular theme, as I mentioned. For example, the Year of Toys is our theme for this year, and unfortunately when I go to schools I have to deliver the very difficult news that 50% of toys end up in landfill within the first 12 months of their use. And the joke that I always use with the kids in schools is that if they're at my house on the lawn and I'm on the ride-on mower, they last less than 24 hours when they've come home from my kids. And it's a really interesting thing when we start to explore all of these different themes around metal recycling and excellent cardboard recycling rates. There are lots of good news stories to talk to kids about, but there are also some stories that are pretty difficult for us. Very difficult for us. Schools love the program and find it to be particularly engaging for students who are looking at elective visual arts. It means that we get these really great social media posts in schools that we wouldn't normally have access to. People don't often like to see a saturation of waste and recycling messaging in their social media schedules. So it's a sneaky way of getting more waste messaging into social media schedules as well. And the media exposure that we get is quite terrific. The community engagement for us is a really key thing in terms of activating people and restoring their faith in recycling. And so one of the workshops that I ran was with the team who do the hand sorting of the recycling at the MRF at Gilgandra. And so to make some Waste to Art entries with them, on Friday I'll drive to Gilgandra for the opening of their Waste to Art at the Visitor Information Centre, and the staff who hand sort the recycling will be at that event with their artworks, and a really great example of how the community is connected around Waste to Art. How am I going for time?
2 minutes.
Fantastic, okay. When you talk to kids about the miracle of the bin and what it means to have a bin, one of the things that I found in my Waste to Art presentations is you talk to kids about reclaimed ocean plastic and all these abstract concepts. And until they can hold it and make something out of it, they don't always absorb the information. So at one of the schools I went to, I said to the kids, well, what would you do with your waste if you couldn't put it in the bin? They said, oh, well, we'd put it in the bin next door. I'm like, no. Like, if there wasn't a bin next door, and they're like, oh, we'd go down to the park and we put it in the bin at the park. And they just can't really comprehend the fact a world without a bin or without a opportunity to get rid of waste. So it really also allows me in my role in education to identify some of the things that underpin our understandings of waste, and just how important it is for us to make sure that kids understand that recycling and waste actually goes somewhere and that something happens to it. So in finishing up, Anthony's here with us from Cowra, which is great. We had a workshop at the Cowra MRF at their materials recycling facility. We ran a Waste to Art workshop. We had a talk about recycling. The community saw the hand sorting MRF in action. They made artworks, and then at their exhibition there'll be conversations between those community members and the other people from the people who have been at that workshop. We'll then be talking with other people at those exhibitions. And just to talk very briefly about how many people we get at our exhibitions, in parks, 7.5% of the population of parks went through the regional showcase and final for Waste to Art. So we saw a huge amount of the population, like just for context, 0.25% of the population of a major city will go to a grand final. So if you're close to nearly 10% of your population attending an event, that is a great audience to be engaged with different topics. And I'll leave you with this, I'll leave you with this final story. But for us, if we want to change attitudes towards waste, Alan Stanger made this lionfish artwork at Dubbo, where each day the workers were all drinking a single drink of water from a plastic cup and throwing it into a bin. And at the end of the day, there's this huge bin full of plastic cups. He didn't really feel that confident to say to all his mates at work, oh, look, guys, we've got to stop throwing all these cups in the bin, you know, what are you doing? So he made this lionfish from the cups that were being discarded every day in this workplace. And it just represents one day's worth of plastic waste in their workplace. And after this went on display and won an award, Alan had that conversation with his co-workers to say, hey, maybe we can do better. And the change then to water bottles and to rinsing out a cup happened through this really exciting and different way of approaching things. And so for us, these great stories that come out of the artworks and the competition are one way for us to activate each community and tell each community's story across the 20 councils that take part at NetWaste. I would really encourage you to have a look at our video. We have a Waste to Art 2024 recap video. Don't think we'll have time for questions, sorry. But we have a Waste to Art 2024 recap video that outlines the regional showcase and final artworks that were on display. Thank you very much for your time. I hope we do have time for questions at the end. But effectively, we're using Waste to Art to try and activate our communities to have conversations around waste to see how we can do better and how we can better understand what we need to do with our waste and how we can reduce our overall footprint. So thank you very much.